Before the big lights, before becoming a CEO, before her worldwide podcast, there was a woman standing in the quiet of uncertainty, searching for meaning in the noise of life. Through adversity, getting distracted in a path that was leading nowhere.
My parents taught me that anything was possible. So when I decided to start really focusing in on having a career and falling back in love with how smart I was, I didn't question that I had the right to do that.
But in the tapestry of Jacqueline Brooker's journey, every thread tells a story of resilience, transformation, and the pursuit of something deeper than success.
At the age of 25, I moved to Melbourne and I fell into a job that I loved that actually created the foundations of my entire career.
A purpose, a life where she was led under great teams, people like Andrew Banks of Shark Tank. She speaks of a world where communication is more than a skill. It's a lifeline, a bridge to understanding, to connection, to healing.
87% of your future success is predicated on your ability to communicate well.
It's not just even CEOs, for everyone.
As a speaker, what we want for the audience is we want them to go from where they are now to where we want them to be to where they never expected to be.
Everyone can do this.
This isn't just an episode, it's a mirror, a reminder that through mentorship comes moving to the next level.
If you want to get better at speaking, it just makes sense going to someone like Jacqueline Brooker.
So if you've ever doubted your voice, if you've ever questioned your worth, let Jacqueline's story ignite your own. Welcome to the CEO Mentorship Series, where your host Collins Mayaki speaks to global leaders, CEOs, making an impact and helping you get to the next level. Stay tuned and enjoy.
Right, let's get started. Jacqueline
Ready.
Brooker, thank you so much for making yourself available to be here at the CEO Mentor Series. My name is Collins Mayaki, and I will be, hosting today's events. And Jacqueline, we would love to take this opportunity to get to know the lady behind the lady, the CEO, the speaker, the mentor herself. What can you tell us a little bit more personal about you in terms of who you are, where you're from, siblings, whatever kind of information that you can give us so our viewer can feel like they know you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big, wild question. I will start with, I guess, who I am as a person. So I am a wife and a mother. So I have 4 adult children who range in age from 23 to 35.
Did you say 23 to 35?
Yes.
23, 35. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So 23, 25, 28, and 35. I'm
Or
also
boys
over the
or
last
girls? What's
2 of each.
2 of each?
2 of each. Yeah. So I've got 2 boys and 2 girls. As of 2 years ago, I'm also a grandmother. And so that's the kind of thing that kind of surprises people when they hear it. I come from a big family, but not a big family. There's just my brother and I and a half sister, but I was very close in age and close in relationship to my aunts and my uncles growing up. So it's kind of like one big extended family. And there's a lot of disruption in our family. Everyone has a backstory, a lot of disruption, a lot of interesting situations and scenarios, I guess. And I guess the only reason why I touch on that is because it's actually shaped a lot of who I am. So I actually was completely off the rails and no real ambition until I was about 25. So was a high performer at high school, was in the top 1% of the country at one stage, on track for some really good stuff, wanted a career in law. And around the age of 16, completely just wiped off the planet, so to speak. So just life circumstances bumped into me. I didn't finish high school. I definitely didn't go to university. I was homeless a couple of times on the streets as a teenager. And then it took me to about 23 to really start to pull back together. And 25, I really hit my straps as far as like just becoming a normal person. And at the age of 27, I had my eldest son. So it's been an interesting journey. I didn't rediscover how smart I was. So I was very smart. Didn't rediscover how smart I was until I fell into a job at the age of 25. So at the age of 25, I'd always had great jobs, but didn't really care about them, but had great jobs and was very good at whatever I did. At the age of 25, I moved to Melbourne and I fell into a job that I loved that actually created the foundations of my entire career. And it was in that role, it was in recruitment, it was in a brand called Morgan & Banks, which most people don't even know anymore. But at the time it was the elite. And that environment was full of very smart, very driven people who were also good humans. And it reminded me that I was clever. And it started me back into a journey of building a career and going places. So yeah, so kind of not the typical journey for someone who ends up in a CEO role, but very much in some ways meant to happen and in other ways totally unexpected.
Wow, Jacqueline, it's quite amazing, And for those of our viewers that think, their life is over because they were not fortunate to go to uni, well, you're not hearing it from me. You're hearing it from Jacqueline saying,
Yeah.
she didn't finish, you didn't even finish high school, right? And she still made it, guys. She still made it. You did say that you're also from a semi-large family. Like, how many siblings did you have? You also have.
So our actual immediate siblings, I've got one full brother and one half sister, but I grew up, I'm the eldest, and I grew up very close in age to my aunts and uncles. So all my school holidays were spent with all of them. All my, spare time, downtime was spent with all of them. So growing up, I felt like I had a really big family.
Right.
So there was about 6, 7 aunts and uncles that I kind of hung around with.
It's amazing, right? When you say being the first child, coming from a very traditional home, I don't know if you were brought up in a quite traditional home or things like that. Growing up in a traditional home, there's quite a massive responsibility that falls on a first child.
Absolutely.
Did you have that kind of pressure being the first child, and how did that play out to shape you to be the woman you are today?
I think it's interesting. I have a traditional background, as in my parents hold traditional values, but our family was definitely not a traditional upbringing. My parents have been married a number of times between them. So my father is on marriage number 3, my mother's on marriage number 4. And most of that happened before I was 20. So it was a very fractured upbringing. But as the oldest of a young brother, so my brother was 5 years younger than me, I remember feeling responsible for him from the time I was about 6 or 7. So there was a lot of, I guess I was more like a really big sister to my little brother than just a sister. And so there was also a closeness between us because of that for a long, long time. Not so much anymore as we're adults, but definitely for a long, long time. So my pressure was very much about taking on the burden to make sure that my little brother was okay. The pressure to perform was never there. The one thing I will give my parents is, and I love them. Like my mother, actually, we share offices, right? So there's no major trauma now, but there was a lot of stuff when we were younger. My parents, both of them in their own way, taught me that anything was possible. So I guess when I was ready to turn my life around after the things that had intervened, I remembered, number one, that I was smart, and I'd never actually been told that you couldn't do something. Right. I've been told that I shouldn't for things that were risky behaviors, but I'd never actually been told that I couldn't do something. So when I decided to start really focusing in on this, on having a career and falling back in love with how smart I was, I didn't question that I had the right to do that.
Amazing. You didn't question that you had the right to do that because you've been brought up with that belief that the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you place your mind into. Obviously, you got to work for it. That's amazing. That's amazing. Which leads me to my next question, Jacqueline. What do you do? I know what you do, but for the sake of the viewers, what exactly do Jacqueline Brooker do?
Our business is called Any Given Tuesday, which gives you no clue as to what we do.
What do you call it? Any Given Tuesday?
Given Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay.
So it came about, actually, the business name came about because of a reading that I did about marriage, which was about when all marriages start in a weekend of celebration, everyone full of love, everyone like you're going to be amazing. But the marriages that survive are the ones that can actually fight and make up on any ordinary Tuesday. And I thought that's kind of when the support has disappeared and nobody's like slapping you on the back and saying you'll be amazing. And I thought it's kind of like the entrepreneurship journey. We start out and all of our friends and all the people surrounding us go, this is a great idea. You're going to be amazing. This will be wonderful. And then it's crickets. And some days you wonder why you're in existence and should you even open the door. And so you have to be able to actually do the things that you need to be able to do on any given day. And that's why we named it Any Given Tuesday. It was a combination of the two.
Wow.
So what I do is we teach people professional and public speaking, and we particularly focus on experts and entrepreneurs. And so there's 2 streams of that. We teach people how to break through as a professional speaker, so you're paid to speak on a main stage, or we teach you how to actually use speaking to drive revenue and claim authority as an expert or an entrepreneur, right? And so the secret with that is there are some slight nuanced differences, but the secret is actually that the build is the same, right? The craft is the same. It's just how we land things. There's some nuances in. So yeah, so that's what we do. And as part of that, we have to teach people how to sell and how to pitch and all of those wonderful things to actually make a commercially viable business behind them.
That's incredible. That's quite incredible. Since you're in the space and you're the professional speaker, and like I'm presuming you've spoken to hundreds or even thousands of people in regards to this particular space, I read somewhere, I can't remember exactly where I read, that's one of the greatest fear of people is public speaking. Based on your experience, is this true, or is this just another made up stuff?
So a lot of people who want to be able to speak for whatever reason, and we don't work with people who just want to see their name in lights. We work with people like, I know I need to speak because I've got something that can make a difference. We work with people who are in service to their audience, right? And so what most people don't realize, and why we actually create very safe spaces, because as you go to find your voice, you have to stare down your demons. Am I worthy enough? Who is going to listen to me anyway? Do I really have the right to speak on this? And so those inner demons really rise. And so we see that, we're witness to that almost every single day. And it's actually the single reason why most people don't sustain a great speaking career, those that don't. And it's also why we see about 40 to 50% of people never actually get on a stage, even though they say they want it, because to do it, you've actually got to look in the mirror and stare down your demons. So we hold some really safe spaces for people, because no matter who they are, they will at some point come up against a kind of like a point where there's a lot of resistance internally. And it may be when they're starting out, it may be when they're actually, we've seen a lot of people who get the first few successful engagements under their belt, whether that's as a professional speaker or driving revenue through their speaking. And that's when they'll start to doubt. It's like, oh, can I really keep this up? And so we've got particular pinch points almost where we have to work with people and give them tools to move through it. So yes, it is a huge fear of people. And even those that believe that they are called to speak, believe that they should be speaking, massive fear around it.
Amazing. Since you've seen other people's fear, I would like to ask you, like, what fear did you have to deal with, or were you just natural, or did you have to deal with certain demons?
Nowhere near natural. Nowhere near natural.
I mean, how was that?
And that's why I do speak a little bit more these days about my background and having some fractures in it, because my way of coming back into the world after being off the rails was to become a good girl. Right? So use my smarts, become a good girl, do the right things, and stay under the radar. Like survival when you're not in a good place is staying under the radar, right? Not drawing attention. So for me, the thought of actually speaking at the front of a room or on a stage was like held the most incredible somatic level, like embodied level threat to me, right? Because my whole way of being was stay quiet, right? And I actually refused to speak. So when I took over a family-owned business in my late 20s, and I took over from someone who spoke all the time to grow the business. So my mother was the speaking figurehead of the business. And I actually had this whole strategy around, because I knew how to speak because of being alongside her, but I had a whole strategy of training our team to go out and do the speaking engagement. So I never had to do it. And we were about 2 years into that strategy, and all my team knew that I didn't like to speak, but nobody in the public knew. We just had this really great, the brand's not about one face anymore. Like we've training up people that can come and do that engagement. So I was training them to speak and training them to sell, but not doing it, not speaking myself. And I was a high performance salesperson, so I was doing that myself. And then one day, I was at an event. I was on the management committee, and the keynote speaker missed her flight, and so I suddenly had to step into her spot. And I was literally like, there's 250 people in the room. I was literally like, I don't speak. And they're like, oh no, Jack, you need to speak. I'm like, no, I don't speak. And eventually, I realized I was going to have to, and I spoke. And the way I describe it is, I became like the shy, quiet teenager that discovers crack cocaine. Right. So I refused to speak. And then I would speak anywhere for anything, for anyone on any topic. Just give me a mic and a breathing person and let me go. And so that's where it started. But I still fought those demons every day. And I still sometimes, when I know I've got to speak, want to cancel the event.
Interesting. Have you ever had a situation where you've trained someone, you've taken them through the process, and you were able to secure a space for them to come speak, and they were no show? Has that ever happened before?
Never.
Never. That's
But no, not ever, because if somebody's at that level and they've come through our programs, they know what they're walking into, right?
Mm.
So a lot of dealing with fear is evidence that you're safe, and also knowing what's coming, right? Being able to prepare. So we can't prepare for the crazy stuff that goes wrong, like, tripping on a stage. I had my shoes stuck in a stage once. I had a screen fall on top of me. Like, you can't prepare for those things, but we can prepare them. I have had people do the first engagement, completely knock it out of the park, do what we call hit the trifecta, and then fall apart. But I've never had a no-show.
Well, there you go. There you go.
Mm.
Have you ever, in terms of, because I'm quite intrigued about this in a sense, because I actually do get asked the question, Collins, I do have very good skills. I'm good at what I do. How can I monetize this? Right.
Mm.
Most people do it through, selling more of their service, but, how can I be in a room where I can speak once and sell to hundreds and things like that?
Mm.
But at the same time, I'm not confident enough to be in front of people to speak to those amount of people. Is there a particular for people that are not in your program at the moment, for some of our viewers that are still starting out, what are some of the routine or things that they can start doing today to make them a stronger speaker? Is it just start speaking, record yourself, and play it back, and repeat,
Yes
or
and no.
yes, it's a type of process?
Yeah, look, I think also so you never get good at speaking until you're in the arena. So you can practice as much as you want. You can have a perfect script, you can have a perfect flow. You can even have a perfect friend who tells you you're amazing. But until you're in the arena, it's not real, right? And so my thing is, if you feel like you should speak, just speak anywhere to start with. Don't worry about whether it's a perfect audience. Don't worry whether they're going to speak. One of the top paid female speakers in the US at the moment, professional speaker, who also has a coaching business behind it, she spoke at 127 Rotary clubs in the first 18 months on the 15-minute slot, and just kept telling stories until she had them refined. Now, she's now paid $30,000 per keynote, and her opening story and her closing stories are those stories she told 127 times at these Rotary clubs, right? So she didn't know that she's going to be able to get there. When it comes to speaking and wanting to speak to many to be able to sell, there's a few things I would say. Number one, there is a quick hack if your nerves are rising and you're about to walk into the room, and that is to do wall push-ups until the tops of your arms fatigue. It expels the adrenaline and brings you back to normal, right? So you just find a hallway or a bathroom or something and just do those wall push-ups until the tops of your arms fatigue. That knocks the adrenaline cap off and brings you back to normal, right? Because adrenaline has to be physically expelled. So if you're clammy hands, if you're feeling nervous, if you've got flushed skin, if you've got all of that sort of stuff happening, just do that. It gets rid of the adrenaline. That's actually an adrenal response. The other thing is practice where it won't hurt. And that's what I mean about the Rotary clubs. It's really interesting. I did a series of speaking when I was probably about 15 years ago, and I did it to test out some new content to grow my business, but I didn't think these audiences were my business. But I got clients out of it still.
Okay.
Right. So I actually went in not expecting to get clients. So the biggest thing is understand clearly. Do not talk about your experience unless you're using it to demonstrate a problem that you solve. Don't tell your story unless it's building trust and credibility. If it's a story that you want to tell, make sure that it's something that builds trust from the audience, not just lets people know who you are. So the biggest mistake I see people making is forgetting it's for the audience and thinking that showcasing your experience is enough. It's not, right? Showcasing your experience is amazing, but then you've actually got to present a compelling through line that gets people to understand that you can solve a particular problem. So if that problem is something they want solved, by the time you finish speaking, they trust you enough to speak to you about it and hopefully giving you some money for it. But most people just think it's amazing. It's just a case of showcasing their experience. If that was the case, we'd all be billionaires.
I could agree with you on that. That's for sure. That's for sure. What would you say is the biggest misconception when it comes to, getting paid to speak? Because again, you mentioned this lady, one of the
Yes, in the US.
female a speaker getting paid maybe 30,000 for speaking event. And some people or some of our audience might hear that and go, oh wow, maybe if I get 10,000 whatever, blah blah blah. We all know that's not the way it works. Like it takes time to get to that type of level to be sought after by corporates and things, like to be paid that kind of big bucks. So what are some of the misconceptions when it comes to getting paid to speak?
A lot of people think if they can just get the right gig, they'll get paid to speak, right? They think if they get a big brand, they'll get paid to speak. They think if they do a TEDx, they'll get paid to speak.
I've heard that one.
No. What does it take to get paid to speak? You have to have something timely and relevant. You have to actually have an insight or perspective that solves a problem. You have to have both an incredible speech and great marketing collateral. You've got to be positioned, right? So when people find you online and digitally, they understand that you can help them, right? So many people say, I'm a speaker. They don't even have speaker in their LinkedIn profile. Right? You have to, the starting rate for most people getting paid to speak is around $2,500 to $3,000. It's a quick bump to $5,000 or $6,000 if you've got some experience. And I don't mean speaking experience, but corporate experience or entrepreneurial experience. You can then go to $7,500 to $8,000 when you're actually sharing IP that is exclusively yours. And then you bump to $10,000 to $12,000 when you're opening conferences. That's the Australian market. Right? Now, to do all of those things, you have to actually be what the market expects. So it's just the same as any of your audience who've got products and services. Like the market will pay a certain amount for a certain standard, right? Whatever your product or service is. Speaking is just a product, right?
Well,
people think speaking is me. Speaking is just a product.
100%, guys. For the viewers, you heard it. There is money to be made. There is money to be made. But you just obviously got to work.
There's a lot more money to be made as somebody speaking to many to grow their business.
There you go. There you go. Amazing. But at the same time, listening to you speak as well, I can tell there is a blueprint to this. It's not just, again, for the sake of this whole podcast, you're obviously breaking things down, but there's so much more work involved in it. There's a pathway you got to follow. You've just dropped little bullet points there saying, you want to go into speaking gig, but you don't even have speaker in your LinkedIn page. Guys, you want to be a speaker? She's just giving you a hint there. Go put speaker on your LinkedIn page. It's more like you trying to, I guess, manifest it into existence before it actually becomes, in a way. So as well, right? So guys, go, you want to be a speaker, first thing today, action you could take, go put in your speaker in your LinkedIn bio. So let's talk about some of the strategies and, eliminating the guesswork. Obviously, this is a part of the things you talk about in your program, right? Now, with your program, how long? Let's take a scenario. You're speaking to a professional, because I really just want the viewers, the audience, to understand how this process could work. Let's say an average person, an average professional, they've been in their industry for a decade. They know their stuff. They're okay when it comes to speaking in front of audience. How long does that process take from an average standpoint, when you average it out based on your experience, to go from going through your program and getting on stage, paid speaking events? It could be the entry point of $1,000 for a speaking event or $2,000 speaking event. How long does that process take?
It does depend, because if someone's got great networks, they can move it faster. But on average, we have a program called Paid Speaker Accelerator. It takes 7 months to get through that, but at the end, they're actually able to get paid gigs. And I find, generally speaking, it's no faster than 4 to 5 months, and it can be 12 to 18 months. Right. But the average is probably around about 7 months to actually start to see that moving. So when we work with someone privately, which we've closed those books at the moment. When we work with someone privately, it's about, if we work with them for 12 months, we can guarantee where they're going to be sitting if they do the work with us. Anything 6 months or below, it is really not easy to predict because of the phases people work through. Our 7-month program that runs once a year, that one, like, people walk out of that having never spoken and landing $5,000, $6,000, and $7,000 engagements, right? And so that is a really intense program. We meet every week. The first 90 days is building a keynote. The middle month is all about what we call the FSD, which is the first draft. And then the last 90 days is getting them into market and teaching them how the market operates. So there's a lot of moving parts. If somebody's already got some experience, we can get their keynote written for them in such a way that it will land gigs within 6 to 12 weeks. So we have, and I take that off. We have a program called Speaker Express, which is 100 days. And we literally just knock out a keynote level signature speech. And that is then ready to go to market. It's also, we've worked with some other people who've already been speaking but can't get to the paid level that they want to be. But there's enough to tell them that this is good, like this is worth pursuing. And with that, quite often, if they've got great content already, but they're not getting the results or the fee or the revenue that they want, we quite often can just reorganize what they've got. And that can be done as quickly as a few days, right? Because they've already got something useful. But if somebody is learning this from scratch, so I want you to think about this. When we hear someone speak as an audience, as a speaker, what we want for the audience is we want them to go from where they are now to where we want them to be to where they never expected to be. And to do that is a deliberate act, right? It is a structured, deliberate act, and all the principles of persuasion and influence and communication and language have to come into it for that to happen. So somebody already has the muscle, we just need to reorganize their content. That's fast, right? But if someone actually hasn't done it before, that takes time.
I see. That's quite amazing. When people are going through this process, what's the first thing you help a client uncover in their message? Because obviously you're taking them through this process, right? But is there something you help them to uncover with their
Yeah, there's three things that we uncover to start with, and the first one is what is their true core speaking identity? I don't care who they are. Because people will say to me, oh, I need to do more public speaking or professional speaking, or I need to speak more. And I know I need to be funny. And my response is always, well, are you funny in real life? Because if you're not funny in real life, please don't try to be funny on a stage, right? That's for the stand-up comedians. So the first thing is we have to identify who they truly are as a speaker at a core level. And so there's a process for that. The second thing we have to identify is actually what is the core, what is their focus on? Because most people will come in and say, I can speak about all the things. The market doesn't care. They want one thing that solves a problem. So we actually have a process to identify what's the first thing they should date. So we talk about flirting, dating, and marrying, your topic.
Flirting, dating, and marrying, okay?
Yeah. So flirting is all the things. I can speak on all the things. I can talk to all the people. That's flirting. You'll never get anywhere, right? Dating is when you go, actually, I'm going to focus on this one thing for this period of time. And then if that works, then you marry it, right? But we have a process to identify what the first point should be that you speak to, right? And then the third part of that is we get really clear on what is the problem this is solving for an audience. Why would they even care about that message? Because if you can't articulate why an audience would care about that message, you will never make money out of it, no matter how good you are.
Amazing. You'll never make money out of it, no matter how good you are. So basically helping people turn their passion into profits in a way, which is quite incredible. Can you give me an example of a particular client you've worked in the past that, let's just say, maybe, obviously without mentioning any names, whatever, let's just say maybe you were a little bit skeptic about, but turned out to be someone that you were so proud of the work you were able to achieve with them? Is there anyone that kind of springs to mind for you?
There's a lot of them. Because we have really great case studies and outcomes and results. So we have some really good ones. We know now that if you follow our red bouncy ball, this will work for you, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you want to speak to grow your business, speak to claim authority, or speak to be paid to speak. One that comes to mind, and it's only because of the fact that she came through our program. She did one of our digital courses first, then joined one of our programs. And I felt like a lot of the stories she was using, that she was insisting on using, were pretty ordinary. Like I felt like they were stories already known. And I wasn't quite sure that she really had anything new, right? She had definitely had her perspective on it, but I wasn't quite sure that the perspective was enough. in the panels, so we, at the end of one of our programs, we have a pitch competition, and the top 7 go through to deliver their new keynote on a stage. And I'm not involved in that, right? It goes to an independent, external, confidential panel. And she made it through into the top 7. And I was like quite surprised. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I love her as a person. I think she's incredible, but I didn't think she was top 7 material. And then on the day, I still was like almost nonplussed. I loved how she turns it. She's fierce on a stage. Like, I love how she turns up on stage, but I was still like, I'm not sure that this is really. And she was in the top 2, right?
Wow.
From an audience feedback perspective, she picked up leads from the floor and got paid engagements from the floor, right? And what held her was the structure we teach, right? And because she has incredible charisma over the top of it, she was an unbeatable combination, right? So that really surprised me, and I don't get surprised much anymore. We do say no to people because I know that they actually don't have the depth of expertise or perspective that we know we can shape into something. So we do say no to people, right? But that one really surprised me. And there's been so many surprises. And I think because we now have the ability, so one of the core tenets of our business is we are in the business of seeing the people that want to be seen. So
I'll just repeat that again for the audience. You are in a business
of seeing the people that want to be seen.
Of seeing the people that want to be seen. I love that. You should have that like a tagline or something.
It will be in some of the revisions we're getting coming out. So, and that creates a great space. But because of that, like, we're looking for the people who want to be seen for all the right reasons. So not, as I said earlier, not that people want their heads up in lights. I mean, your audience is CEOs and entrepreneurs and founders. It is so important for people in your audience to learn how to speak. It's actually, regardless of whether you ever think you want to be a professional speaker, just to learn how to speak and to be the authority figure and to be the go-to person and to be the thought leader, to learn how to speak and communicate really, really well from a speaking perspective on a stage or a platform in a room changes everything. And it opens doors that you never knew existed.
It's amazing listening to you say this as a speaker mentor.